The smell was sharp, sour, like 1,000 rotten eggs mixed with spoiled milk. It clung to the air around him like an invisible cloud that refused to blow away. But because he was the son of Chief Abeggi, no one dared to mention it. They smiled through gritted teeth, held their breath when he came near, and waited until he was gone to let out long sighs of relief. The traders in the market would quickly wrap up their goods when they saw him coming. Children playing in the streets would suddenly remember their mothers calling them home. Even the elderly, who had seen all manner of strange things in their long lives, would find reasons to be elsewhere when Smith approached. Have you ever kept a secret so dark, so powerful, that it destroyed someone's chance at love? Today I'm going to tell you a story that will make you question everything you know about family, love, and the choices parents make to protect their children. Get comfortable because this tale will take you on an emotional journey you won't soon forget. In a vast village where palm trees swayed like dancers and rivers flowed like silver ribbons, lived a boy named Smith. His story isn't just any story, it's a tale that will make you look at your own life differently. You see, Smith was the only son of Chief Abeggi, the wealthiest man in the village. But don't think this is just another story about a rich boy. Because what happened to Smith could happen to any of us. From the moment he could walk, people couldn't help but stare at Smith. He was handsome in a way that made the sun itself pause to admire him. His eyes were like pools of honey, warm and inviting. His smile could light up the darkest night, and his laugh was so melodious that birds would stop singing just to listen. Women would pause their conversations mid-sentence when he passed by, and young girls would giggle behind their hands, whispering, "Look how handsome he is." But beneath this beauty lay a curse so strange, so powerful, that it would change the course of his life forever. A curse that would teach us all an important lesson about love, acceptance, and the power of seeing beyond the surface. You see, everywhere Smith went, a smell followed him. Not the normal smell of sweat after playing in the sun, not the smell of the herbs his father's cooks used in their kitchen, but something else entirely, something that made people step back, wrinkle their noses, and find excuses to walk away. The smell was sharp, sour, like 1,000 rotten eggs mixed with spoiled milk. It clung to the air around him like an invisible cloud that refused to blow away. But because he was the son of Chief Abeggi, no one dared to mention it. They smiled through gritted teeth, held their breath when he came near, and waited until he was gone to let out long sighs of relief. The traders in the market would quickly wrap up their goods when they saw him coming. Children playing in the streets would suddenly remember their mothers calling them home. Even the elderly, who had seen all manner of strange things in their long lives, would find reasons to be elsewhere when Smith approached. And Smith? He had no idea. No one had ever told him the truth. All he knew was that people admired him from afar, but never stayed close. Girls would approach him, excited and eager, only to suddenly remember urgent errands they had to run. Their faces would change in an instant, from interest to confusion, from confusion to discomfort, and finally to poorly hidden disgust. Over time, Smith learned to accept this strange dance. The way people would come close, then quickly step away, their faces twisting into masks of politeness that couldn't quite hide their true feelings. He began to spend more and more time alone, finding solace in the company of nature, where the trees didn't run away and the rivers didn't hold their breath. Every morning he would wake up, hoping today would be different. Today, someone would stay. Today, someone would see past whatever it was that drove everyone away. But each day ended the same way, with Smith sitting alone, watching the sun set and wondering what was wrong with him. His father, Chief Abeggi, tried to compensate for his son's loneliness by showering him with gifts. The finest clothes from distant lands, precious jewels that sparkled like stars, anything money could buy. "My son," he would say, placing another expensive gift in Smith's hands, "you are perfect just as you are." But all the wealth in the world couldn't fill the emptiness in Smith's heart. Then one day, everything changed. Her name was Hannah, and she appeared like a breath of fresh air in Smith's stagnant world. It happened by the stream where Smith often sat alone, throwing pebbles into the water and watching the ripples spread like the lonely thoughts in his heart. Unlike everyone else, Hannah didn't just glance his way and hurry past. She stood there, watching him with eyes that seemed to see straight through to his soul. "The water tells better stories when you skip the stones," she said, picking up a flat pebble and sending it dancing across the surface of the stream. 5 perfect bounces before it finally sank. Smith looked up, surprised not just by her words, but by the fact that she was still standing there, showing no signs of running away. Her presence was like a cool breeze on a hot day, unexpected, but welcome. She wore simple clothes, nothing like the elaborate outfits of the chief's daughters who sometimes tried to catch his attention. But there was something about her, a quiet confidence, a gentle strength, that made her more beautiful than any princess. "I'm Hannah," she said, sitting down beside him without waiting for an invitation. "And you're Smith, the chief's son who likes to hide from the world." He wanted to deny it, to say he wasn't hiding, but the words stuck in his throat because they both knew it was true. Instead, he watched as she picked up another stone, her fingers testing its smoothness before sending it skipping across the water. 7 bounces, she counted with a smile. "That's good luck, you know. My father taught me that. He's a carpenter. Says the same patience it takes to skip stones is what you need to work with wood." Days turned into weeks, and Hannah became a constant in Smith's life. She took him to places in the village he'd never dared to go before, the busy marketplace where traders called out their wares, the quiet corners where old men played AO games and told stories of ancient times, the hilltop where you could watch the sun paint the sky in colors no artist could capture. When Hannah first took Smith to the marketplace, it was like seeing the world through new eyes. The market was a symphony of life, women in colorful wrappers bargaining over fresh yams, children weaving between stalls chasing each other with wooden toys, and old men sitting in the shade playing traditional board games while sharing wisdom passed down through generations. Usually, Smith avoided such crowded places. The shame of watching people step away from him, of seeing their faces change from welcome to disgust, had kept him isolated in his father's compound. But with Hannah by his side, something was different. "Look," she said, pulling him toward a stall where an old woman was roasting corn. The smell of the roasting corn somehow cut through the curse that followed him, and for a moment Smith could pretend he was normal. The old woman smiled, her face wrinkled like a well-loved map, and handed them each a steaming cob. "First time I've seen the chief's son in my stall," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Your father usually sends servants to buy from me." As they walked through the market, Hannah introduced him to everyone she knew, the fabric seller who had taught her to weave when she was young, the fruit vendor who always saved the sweetest mangoes for her father, the toy maker who carved tiny animals that seemed almost alive. Each person greeted them differently than Smith was used to. Perhaps it was Hannah's presence, or perhaps it was the way she introduced him not as Chief Abeggi's son, but simply as Smith, my friend, and through it all, she stayed close. She didn't wrinkle her nose, didn't make excuses to leave, didn't hold her breath or step away. She just stayed. She laughed at his jokes, listened to his stories, and shared her own dreams of building beautiful things with wood, just like her father. "Why aren't you like the others?" Smith asked her one evening as they watched the sun set from their favorite spot by the stream. "Why don't you run away?" Hannah turned to look at him, her eyes serious. "Because I see you, Smith. Not the chief's son, not the handsome boy everyone talks about, just you. And you're worth staying for." Those words settled in Smith's heart like seeds taking root, growing into something he'd never dared to hope for before. Love. Real love. Not the shallow admiration he was used to seeing in people's eyes before they caught his scent and fled. As the seasons changed, their love grew stronger. Hannah showed Smith her father's workshop, taught him how to feel the grain of wood beneath his fingers, how to see the beauty hidden inside each rough piece of timber. In return, Smith shared with her the quiet places he'd discovered during his years of solitude, the hidden coves along the river, the ancient trees that seemed to whisper secrets in the wind. When Hannah asked to marry him, Smith's happiness was tinged with fear. He'd seen too many girls approach him with love in their eyes, only to run away on their wedding night. But Hannah was different. She had always been different. The wedding was simple, nothing like the grand celebrations the village expected from the chief's son. Just close family, a few friends, and promises spoken under the watching eyes of the elders. Hannah wore a dress she had made herself, simple but beautiful, like everything about her. But that night, as they prepared for bed in their new home, Smith's hands trembled as he removed his clothes. The moment his pants came off, the smell that had haunted him all his life filled the room like a thick, choking fog. Hannah coughed, her eyes watering, and Smith's heart shattered. This was it, the moment she would run, just like all the others. He could already see the future stretching out before him, another lonely life, another love lost, another heart broken. But then something extraordinary happened. Instead of running, Hannah opened the window to let in fresh air, then turned back to him. She walked across the room and did something no one had ever done before. She hugged him. The smell was still there, terrible and overwhelming, but she held him close and whispered, "It's okay, Smith. We'll figure this out together." In that moment, Smith knew what real love felt like. Not the kind that runs at the first sign of trouble, but the kind that stays and fights. The kind that sees past all barriers to the heart beneath. The next morning, Hannah brought an old woman to their house. Her hair was white as cotton, and her eyes held wisdom gathered over many seasons. She was Akanama, the most powerful herbalist in 7 villages, known for her ability to see what others couldn't. Akanama took one look at Smith's pants, and her face darkened like storm clouds gathering. "This is no ordinary smell," she declared. "This is a curse. A powerful one, woven with fear and love gone wrong." And so the truth finally came out. Chief Abeggi, summoned to explain, broke down and told the story he had kept hidden for so many years. When Smith was just a small boy, his beauty had attracted the attention of powerful families. One particularly feared chief had demanded to betroth the boy to his daughter, threatening violence if refused. The chief was known for his cruelty, for treating his wives like property, for raising children who carried his meanness in their hearts. Desperate to protect their son from such a fate, Smith's parents had sought help from a different herbalist, who gave them a substance to rub on Smith's pants. "It will make him smell so bad that no one will want to come near him," the herbalist had promised. "He will be safe from those who would use him for their own gain." What they didn't know was that the substance was cursed. It had worked too well, turning their attempt at protection into a prison that kept their son isolated and lonely for years. Every time they watched him suffer, every time they saw the pain in his eyes when another person turned away, they told themselves it was better than the alternative. Smith listened to his father's confession, tears streaming down his face. All those years of wondering why people ran away, all those nights of feeling unlovable, it had all been because of his parents' fear. Their love had become a cage, their protection a curse. But Akanama had a solution. Under the light of the full moon, they performed a ritual. The night of the curse-breaking ritual was one the village would never forget. As the full moon rose high above the trees, casting silver light across the land, people gathered at the edges of their compounds, watching silently as Chief Abeggi, Akanama, Hannah, and Smith made their way to the sacred grove where Smith's mother was buried. The air was thick with anticipation. Even the night creatures seemed to hold their breath. No crickets chirped, no owls called. The only sound was the soft tap of Akanama's staff against the earth and the rustling of palm fronds in the gentle breeze. At the grave, Chief Abeggi fell to his knees. His rich robes, usually so pristine, gathered dust as he bowed his head before his wife's final resting place. In his hands, he held a white cloth containing the offerings. Fresh yams from the first harvest, palm oil from the sacred trees, and a piece of the cursed pants that had caused so much pain. "My love," he whispered, his voice breaking, "I thought I was protecting our son. I thought I was keeping him safe, but fear blinded me. Fear turned our love into poison." Tears fell from his eyes, darkening the earth beneath him. "Help us make this right." Akanama stepped forward, her white hair glowing in the moonlight. She began to chant, ancient words that seemed to make the very air vibrate. The trees swayed without wind, and the ground beneath their feet felt warm as if responding to her call. From her bag, she pulled out a calabash filled with water from 7 different rivers, collected at 7 different dawns. Water remembers, she said, her voice deep with wisdom. "It remembers its original state of purity, and it can help others return to their true nature." One by one, she mixed sacred herbs into the water, leaves that only grew in the deepest parts of the forest, roots that only showed themselves under the full moon, bark from trees older than the village itself. As she worked, she told the story of each ingredient, explaining how each one represented a different kind of healing. Healing from fear, from isolation, from shame. When the mixture was ready, she took the cursed pants and dipped them into the calabash. The water hissed and bubbled, turning dark as night, then clear as crystal. Steam rose from the surface, carrying with it the sour smell that had haunted Smith all his life. "Now," Akanama said, "to the river." The group walked in solemn procession to the riverbank. The moon's reflection danced on the water's surface, creating a path of light that seemed to invite them forward. Chief Abeggi waded into the water until it reached his waist. "River of our ancestors," he called out, his voice echoing across the water. "Wash away this curse born of fear. Cleanse my son of the burden I placed upon him. Let love flow freely once more." With those words, he released the pants into the current. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the water around the cloth began to glow with a soft blue light. The glow spread outward in circles, like ripples from a thrown stone, growing larger and larger until the entire river seemed to shine. A wind swept through the trees, carrying away years of pain and loneliness. The very air seemed to change, becoming lighter, cleaner, free of the invisible burden it had carried for so long. And in that moment, everyone present felt something shift, as if the world itself had taken a deep, cleansing breath. The next morning dawned different than any other in Smith's life. For the first time, he could walk through the village without people turning away. Children no longer ran when he approached. The market traders smiled genuine smiles, not the forced ones he was used to seeing. But the most beautiful change wasn't in how others treated him. It was in how he felt about himself. The weight of shame and isolation that had pressed down on his shoulders for so long was finally lifted. He could stand tall, breathe deeply, and look people in the eye without fear. Hannah noticed the change in him immediately. "You're walking differently," she said, taking his hand as they strolled through the village. "Like you finally believe what I've known all along, that you're worthy of love." In the days that followed, their home became a gathering place for others who felt different or excluded. People would come seeking advice, comfort, or simply a place where they could be themselves without judgment. There was the young girl with a birthmark that covered half her face, who had always hidden in the shadows. Smith taught her how to hold her head high and see her mark as a sign of uniqueness rather than shame. There was the boy who stuttered when he spoke, who found in their home a place where he could take all the time he needed to express himself. Chief Abeggi, transformed by the experience, used his wealth and influence to create change in the village. He established a monthly feast where all were welcome, regardless of their status or appearance. These gatherings became famous throughout the region, drawing people from distant villages who had heard of the place where differences were celebrated rather than shunned. At these feasts, stories would be shared, stories of overcoming judgment, of finding acceptance, of love that soared beyond the surface. And always the story of Smith and Hannah would be told, though it changed slightly with each telling. Growing richer and deeper like a well-tended garden. Some versions emphasized the curse and its breaking, while others focused on the love that had conquered it. But all versions carried the same truth at their heart, that real love sees with the heart, not the eyes, and that sometimes our greatest challenges can lead us to our greatest blessings. As the years passed, Smith and Hannah's children grew into adults who carried their parents' wisdom forward. Their eldest daughter became known throughout the region for her work with outcasts and strangers, creating spaces where people could find acceptance and belonging. Their son combined his mother's skill with carpentry and his father's understanding of pain to create beautiful things that brought joy to others. Their home remained a sanctuary, its doors always open to those in need of reminder that they were not alone. The garden Hannah had planted grew into a lush paradise, filled with flowers that bloomed year-round and fruit trees that seemed to bear sweeter fruit than any others in the village. And on quiet evenings, when the sun painted the sky in colors no artist could capture, Smith and Hannah would sit by their favorite stream, still skipping stones across the water. Sometimes they would speak of the past, of the curse, of the fear that had created it, of the love that had broken it. But more often, they would simply sit in comfortable silence, their hands intertwined, listening to the water's song. They had learned that love isn't about ignoring differences or pretending they don't exist. It's about seeing those differences as part of what makes each person unique and valuable. It's about staying when others leave, about fighting for someone when they can't fight for themselves, about seeing the beauty that others miss. As the story spread beyond their village, carried by travelers and traders to distant lands, it took on new meanings for each person who heard it. For some, it was a tale of parental love gone wrong and the courage to make things right. For others, it was a reminder that true beauty lies beneath the surface. But for most, it was simply a story about the kind of love we all hope to find. Love that accepts us exactly as we are, that sees our differences not as flaws but as gifts. And so, dear friends, when you feel different or alone, remember Smith's story. Remember that somewhere out there is someone who will see past all your barriers, someone who will stay when others leave, someone who will love you not in spite of your differences but because of them. Because that's what real love does. It sees with the heart, stays through the storms, and breaks every curse that tries to stand in its way. In the end, what better magic could there be than that? The villagers still tell this story on quiet evenings when the palm trees sway and the rivers sing their ancient songs. They tell it to remind themselves that true love isn't about perfection, it's about seeing someone's heart through all their imperfections. They tell it to remember that sometimes the greatest curses can lead us to the greatest blessings. But most of all, they tell it because it reminds them that in a world quick to judge by appearances, the most powerful magic of all is having someone who loves you exactly as you are. And that's a story worth telling again and again, until the sun sets and the moon rises, until the rivers run dry and the palm trees dance their last dance. Because in the end, isn't that the kind of love we're all hoping to find? So remember, dear friends, the next time you feel different or alone, that somewhere out there is someone who will see past all your barriers, someone who will stay when others leave, someone who will love you not in spite of your differences, but because of them. Because that's what real love does. It sees with the heart, stays through the storms, and breaks every curse that tries to stand in its way. And isn't that the most beautiful magic of all? Thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed the story so far, please drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification so you won't miss any updates. Thank you, and remember, we love you.